right, we've just clicked over 7 o'clock, so we'll get this meeting started and hopefully the stragglers will roll on in. So following on from our coaching session from last month, which was the referee game plan, we're going to be exploring the first topic of that, which was team tactics, in which Tom Laxton, who has very kindly offered to join us and take us through a different perspective about the coaching technical aspect that will hopefully increase our match management and being able to read and anticipate the game better, or just give us a few more cues to help us when we're out there. All right, so acknowledgement of country. Football Queensland acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we play, referee, coach, administer and watch football, and recognising their continuing connection to the land and community. We pay our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. Okay, so our aim tonight is to increase our awareness with team tactics to assist with our football understanding and to read and anticipate play. And in a nutshell, to be in the right place at the right time and preferably to make the right decision. So this is what we covered last week, and this is what I really want to flesh out and explore more during this session. So team tactics, we discussed, does a team play short from goal kicks? Do they play direct when fullback is in possession? Do they look to counter quickly or counter press the opponent? And the tactics of teams at set play situations. And people may just think that's just blah, 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 blah. Like maybe they don't actually understand what that means or how that can impact our refereeing. So what does this mean for your positioning? Well, let's find out. So IFAB says that the general positioning and movement. So the best position is one from which the referee can make the correct decision, and all recommendations about positioning must be adjusted using the specific information about the teams, the players, and the events in the match. And that's what Tom, who is online, is going to lead us through in the discussion. So welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Jackie. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? It's a great pleasure to be here tonight. So look, thanks very much tonight. I just wanted to go through a few bits that we could hopefully help you out with from a technical coaching perspective, why we set up the way we do, what teams are looking for in the different ways that they sort of set up their teams, and how that can help you as an official on the pitch. It's been actually quite interesting for me over the last week or so looking into this and realising the similarities of how player development and coaching development and how coaches and players, all right, they're taking a different role on the pitch, but how they come around to decision making is very similar. So we'll talk about that as well. For my own benefit as well, I'm here to learn, so there might be some things that I'm totally off the mark. So Jackie and everyone else might be able to fill me in some of the lingo and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'll be coming from obviously a coaching and playing perspective. So we'll get started, and hopefully you can see the screen all right. We'll go through a few little bits, and I may have to break up the screen and come back to it, because this will be like a virtual tactics board for us as we go through. So, as I say, this topic we could spend all night on, and Jackie, I'm certainly willing to come back and do some more sessions, because I think it's so in depth that tonight really we can only sort of go over a bit of a framework and some general ideas. Maybe we can be a bit more specific later on down the line. So that's what I was aiming to do today. So we're just going to look at some formations and shapes, why and how teams play different ways that they do. Being really specific to playing out from the back and winning the ball back from a goal kick. Distances and covering ground, so looking at the visual cues and attention placement that you need as an official referee. And then to touch into some of the similarities with developing players from a technical perspective. But the real big thing for myself, and showed Jackie this during the week, was about a model for decision making. So similar to how we develop players, we can work on first touch, we can work on striking the ball, we can really break it down into the component parts of being a player. But of course, on the pitch, it's making the right decision. Do I pass? Do I shoot? Do I use my left foot or my right foot? do I keep the ball and pass it safe, or do I have to risk it and try and score a goal because we're 1-0 down? And it's very similar to the model of decision making for a referee. And you could break down the component parts into decision making of what the outcome is. So you could watch lots of videos. Is it a yellow card? Is it a red card? You could break it down into positioning, where to best be on the field, the state of the game, the right decision, the player management. But really, as we all know, it's putting that all together in the right way to come around with the right decision. So it's very similar to a player. I'll send you these slides, and one of the things that I was looking at, one of the papers that I was looking at was around a model, a framework of decision making, and it spoke to that. It spoke about how, yes, all those component parts of refereeing is important, but actually, this, making real good high level decisions is pulling that all together. So that's a really good article to have a look at, and that's where I pulled a lot of this information from. So the factors associated with our decision making, and look, I'm not teaching to suck it. You're obviously far more qualified as a referee than myself, but these are the types of things. These all play into you having a good game, same as a player. So all of these things are really important. Obviously tonight I'm here just to talk about a few of these parts. So how tactics can affect field positioning, how it could probably affect your visual attention and search strategy, and what you should look at what moment. And then maybe some of the other things about game management and where you are in terms of the match context and positions. Obviously the other stuff I'm sure you're well aware of and manage that in your own development models there. So this sums it up really. A soccer referee do not engage in isolated decision-making tasks. So you don't have time, unfortunately, especially in the modern game, to break it down. Is my positioning right? Tick. Am I looking in the right direction? Tick. If I made the right decision? Tick. It's all got to happen instantly, and it's the same for a player. So tonight is really just, like I say, a snapshot of that model with relation to the tactics and what we're looking at. Has anyone got any questions about that so far? All agree? Sort of round about right? Yeah, good. Good. So this is for a player, and I don't want to get too bogged down into the sciencey talk, but for a player's perspective, it's very similar. I just wanted to show you this as well because I think it ties in nicely with learning the game. We can all be students of the game. So which visual cues are my alerts? So it's all very well seeing things, but what are the most important things to look at? Remember, this is for a player. So movement, time, space and positioning, body orientations, really important for a player. So we often talk as players about body shape, about where your shoulders are sitting and what you can see. And a really good one that we use for players, which I think is quite pertinent to referees, is C2C, so crossbar to crossbar. Can you see both crossbars? So if you can only see one crossbar and you're looking one way, it means obviously your field of vision is not open, and it's harder to open up the play and play forwards, which we want as players. We want positive players as players. Now, obviously that doesn't happen all the time, and there's reasons why you might have to face back to your own goal. But we'll talk about later as a referee. Generally, obviously, we want to see as much as we can, but sometimes we need to be really specific. And if we know about the trends of the game, then that makes that part really easier. So then when we see something, we can cross-reference in what we've seen before. So long-term working memory, that's your experience of a referee. So if you've seen that tug of a shirt 100 times in your career, you know exactly what the right decision is. So that comes down to experience. But if you can't see it, then obviously you can't apply your experience to it. So they kind of lead on to the next one. Higher importance of categorization. So from a football player's perspective, if I receive the ball and I'm facing forward and the striker is in to go and score the goal, then obviously I'm going to look to play that pass to go and score a goal. I'm not going to pass sideways to midfield. So that categorization of importance for a player is really simple. Like score a goal or create a goal. If you can't create a goal, keep the ball. Now for a referee, I'm just trying to think about how that might work for yourselves, but it might be, if it's a serious incident, first things first, blow the whistle and see if the player's all right. And then you work your way down. I'm sure you have your own checklists of how you deal with players and what timing you do things. And then obviously the action allocation, the decision on what you do. So I know it's a bit wordy and a bit of a scientific sort of way to look at it, But when you look back from the decision, and everyone looks and talks about referees' decisions, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes earlier, that chain of events has already started. So it's really important that we get this right, because if we get this wrong, then obviously that catalogue of events, down to the decision, it's going to make your life harder or a lot easier. So this was the model that this paper spoke to. And it just talks about a sequence of events, very similar to how we would expect a decision to be made from a player. So I'll give you a chance to have a quick look at that, but it reads 1 to 5 with a decision at the end. Excuse me. So number 1, of course, where do I run? Obviously, you know the technical details of a referee about diagonal system, things like that. And then in the far right column, it's influencing factors. So of A, B, C, D of part 1, these are the things that are going to help me with that where to run. Where to gaze, where to anticipate, the event or the infringement happens, and then you go into your Rolodex in your mind. What do I call? From your long-term working memory. And then do you need to keep this decision, change the decision? I think that's more involved in the VAR or talking to an assistant or fourth official, but obviously that's still part of our chain of events. So what I was going to talk about now is where them yellow highlighted areas are and how they could help from a technical perspective. So where to run, so prior knowledge of a team's playing style. So if you know that you've got a team that set up in a certain way, then obviously that's going to help you in where you position yourself and run. And the match style as well. You know, if you're refereeing an NPL grand final, what you expect from the players' output for you know the style of playing that game compared to a Cap 2 game, midweek league game doesn't really mean too much. Obviously, they're completely different ends of the spectrum. And then within the event infringement, the positioning and your attention focus, we can talk about those in terms of positioning on the field. So hopefully everyone's with me so far. And we've got a chain of events, and now we're just going to talk about the sort of technical components there, where these yellow highlighted areas can help you where to run, where to look, maybe where to anticipate. Didn't speak about that one, and infringement and what to call. So this is just a real simple image. I know like the windows of our faces might be in the way a little bit, but you can drag them and move them around so you can see. But it just breaks that down. So real simple. Starting with the top left, where to run. If you know where the players are setting up and where they're likely to play that first pass, especially from the goal kick, then that's going to help you. It really is going to help you. And trust me, there's a lot of difference about how teams set up and the way they do things. The state of the game will change that, obviously. You know, if teams are chasing down the clock to get an equaliser or a winner. But more and less, you know, the way that they set up, the principles of play will tell you where to run. Where to gaze, again, we spoke about from a player's perspective, that C2C, that crossbar to crossbar. So at the moment, that referee is obviously only looking at one crossbar, but maybe rightly so, because that's where the majority of the play is. Okay, and as I say, it might be different from a referee perspective, because obviously you've got an extra 2 sets of eyes. And he said 4 sets of eyes then, but 2 sets of eyes. What to anticipate, again, if you can see trends in the game and you can put your football hat on, your coach's hat on, and you can see, okay, well, when that player passes to that player, they're trying to do this, okay? So that can help you read what can happen. A tackle is identified, and then obviously that's the moment. What to call, and that's using your Rolodex of experience, and then you keep or change your decision. So that's just a visual example of that model we spoke about. And again, the yellow areas here are where the technical side, the tactical understanding of teams can help you. So that where to run, we spoke about positioning, preparation, but you know, tying into that outside of this conversation, you've got context, fitness, massive one, and your experience. Where to gaze obviously fires into that box as well. What to anticipate, so these are things that are outside the scope of this conversation, but the weather, prior match events, fatigue, stress, that's what you can read is coming next. You know, is it a tense game? Has there been some bad tackles? You know what's coming next. You can kind of feel that, can't you? Identifying potential events. Okay, so again, that comes down to, there's a 50-50 coming, there's going to be a big one. So that might be, again, positioning, view and focus. If you're in the right space and you're right on top of things, then that's going to help you with that decision. And that LTWM is long-term working memory. And then what to call. So yeah, what to call, the criteria, decision that you make, and then execute the decision. So if I want to ask you a quick question, it would be if, and feel free to jump off mute and just come back to me with this one as I move out of this sort of, might have to come out of this mode, is if you could go into a game knowing anything about a game, sorry, the tactics and the style of a team, what would you want to know? So what would you want to know from a team? If you could open a magic book and it was going to tell you the information of the game coming up, what would you want to know? I guess from like a tactical perspective, or if you could make your life easier, what would you like to know about the game?
Two that have come up, Tom, is formation and approach to set pieces.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Okay. That's great. I mean, yeah, we'll talk about formation, certainly.
Play tasks, team task, the coach's philosophy.
Yeah, definitely. Look, how brilliant would it be if you could walk in, open the door of the home changing room and see, we're going to put the ball in behind them and we're going to kick it very long every single time.
Or like, yeah, why do they play?
Brilliant. Yeah, excellent. So that's the type of thing that we're talking about. Exactly that is, like, as you say, if you know, and on our little, can you see my screen still? Yeah, good. Is if you know that this green team are going to put it long every single time they get it to two forwards, then obviously that's going to affect, you know, if they were playing out from the back here and they played it short, your positioning is not going to be up here, because you know every single time they get it, it's going to be shelled down the bottom. Now, I'm pretty sure that as modern referees, you're adaptable and you're pretty smart about how the game goes. So by the second time that they do that, you probably know that they're going to do that all game, right? But if we're thinking ahead and knowing about the way that players set up, maybe like one or two times that they do it and you're not around the ball, maybe that's the first, you know, that first ball over the top. If you're still down here and that ball goes in and it's in the box and there's a big decision to be made in the first minute, you know, that can change the flow of the game. So knowing how a team sets up, obviously sometimes we haven't got a crystal ball and sometimes we don't know. But what I would suggest is, you know, if you are refereeing at that top level, maybe do a little bit of homework, you know, pick up the phone, I've got my number, you can ask me anytime you want, you know, you can look on NPL TV, have a look, you know, start educating yourself in the game. And I'm not telling anyone to suck eggs, you know the game. But, you know, if you've got a team coming up that do that, make a little note to yourself, right? They're going to go long, quick. And now my positioning from this goal kick is going to be, it might look like that now. Okay, so if it does go from back to front, your field of vision is going to be able to pick it up. So I thought that was a really interesting thing from my perspective to ask you guys is, have you ever done that? Have you ever analysed the team that you're about to do? 10%, 20% of the time? Obviously, you know, juniors, and it's not really about that, but I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting exercise, because we're going to talk about tactics and things like that. It's all very well having the knowledge, but it's I think if you've got the knowledge and you can apply it after the whistle goes, great. But that first 10, 15 minutes when you're sussing out what's going on, maybe if you go into the game, that will cover you for that first 10, 15 minutes. Okay, so just have a little think about that. Jackie, do you want to add anything to that, or is there any questions? All good?
No, if there's match footage available, we also utilise Huddle, in which all the stream games go up into that. So the referees are encouraged to do their own self-analysis on there, because that's where the best learning opportunities happen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now, look, I think I don't know if anyone's seen some of the, the All or Nothing shows that they did, where they were like behind the scenes of Man City and Tottenham and things like that. And you see when they're leading into a game, they have a really in-depth tactical breakdown of the opponents. Where this defender here might be slower than this defender. So instead of it going from this player all the way through, it might be switched across to hit behind this slower defender. Now that's at the top end when they're talking about, minute details with, top end. But certainly I think, even you just got a cheat sheet for yourself. Right, these guys like to set up with a 4-4-2. They go back to front. These guys set up in a 3-4-3, and they like to play out. And then just get yourself thinking, because that might lead into a little bit of anticipation into some of the games, which I think is really important. Now, look, as I said, we could talk, or I could talk for all night about tactics and shapes and things like that, but I just wanted to cover some real obvious common positions and some things that might help you, like I say, even if you just take one or two little things from it, that would be really good. So this is a 4-2-3-1 in yellow against a 4-4-2 diamond in green. So some of the real important things for the greens in a 4-4-2 when they haven't got the ball. So let's just say the yellow player has got the ball there, B for ball. They want to try and keep the ball on one side of the pitch. So whichever side the ball is on the pitch, they really want to keep the ball this side. Why do you think that is? Why would they want to keep the ball on that side here? If they've got that tight diamond there, who's got the most space on the pitch? Can you see? So probably these guys, the wingers, the fullbacks. When you play with a diamond, you've obviously got lots more bodies in here. You've got an overload 1, 2, 3, 4 against 3. But the fullbacks are the real danger when you play in this system. So when the greens have got the ball, or haven't got the ball, sorry, they really want to make it compact and keep it on one side. So they probably come across. This one would come across as well. Oh, this is where we're going to go wrong a little bit. Come across, and they're really going to try and stop that ball getting out to this opposite side. So as a referee, I would suggest that we need to be mindful that a lot of the play, a lot of the collisions, a lot of the tackles will probably be on the ball side. But thinking about that body shape, an open body shape, be prepared that if it does go and if they do get out, then it's really going to go. The ball's going to be moved real quick, and this fullback will be up there before you know it. So if we're in here, we want to be on top of the play, which of course we do. If that ball's played in there, there's going to be collisions. We're going to be, shirt pulls and all the rest of it. So you want to be on top, but we've got to be ready that if it does get out here, then obviously they're really gonna get on. Okay, so just some things to think about there. In the shape as well, when we play a 4-4-2 diamond, it's probably a shape that lends itself to going direct quite a lot and longer balls. So one forward here would likely be moving in this direction, and one forward would be moving in this direction. So if we've got a green player here who's on the ball, this player is going to look to drop off and get the ball to feet. He's going to come in to get it to feet. And what he's trying to do is disrupt this back line there to open up space for a run in behind. Okay, so that player now might have two choices. He can put it in behind for there, or if that defender decides he wants to stay, then this player's got lots of lovely space to get on the ball and turn. But because they're marked man to man, okay, and they're up against each other, I would suggest that 4-4-2 diamond is probably a bit of a ref's nightmare, to be honest, because there's lots of forward play, direct play, getting it forwards. If they do get out your position, then you've got to be on your toes and you've got to be moving quickly. So just think about covering big distances and fullbacks sort of getting out as well. So as I mentioned, these guys, these fullbacks here would really be able to get out. So in the opposite shape, we had a 4-2-3-1, and I wouldn't get hung up too much on numbers and things like that. They said that the formation only lasts as long as the kick-off, and then it's just the flow of the game. But in a 4-2-3-1 where the yellows are, one of the real important things from an attacking principle is, sorry, was that a question or a sneeze? I think it was a sneeze. One of the important things is to try and stretch the greens. So if you look here, that line here, really important that these wide players make it difficult for these fullbacks. So if we got a midfielder on the ball in here, there, it's real hard as a defender to defend across all of that distance. It's nice and easy if the players are all in front of you and you're just defending the width of the box. So when it's 4-2-3-1, it's really important that the wide players get wide and stretch this back line. Now, as a referee, okay, what I would suggest is if the yellows get the ball and they're in possession of it, if you're too close to the play and you're too, sorry, this is a bit fiddly, if you're too high up to the play, then obviously your field of vision is not going to be able to capture all of that. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn because you might have an official to cover what you can't see. And again, Jackie, feel free to jump in here, but I would suggest that maybe when you're planning with a team that is looking to stretch the defence, being able to have your head on a bit of a swivel or seeing a bit more of the picture is going to be really important. Okay, so just a real quick, snapshot of a couple of key points from those formations. Any questions on those before we move on? All good, all good. So another quick fire round. So 3-5-2. Okay, so the yellows are a 3-5-2, and this was really used quite well in the Euros. So the Italians used it really well, and it's funny like how things come into trends and rotate round and fall back out again. But certainly 3-5-2 was a really sort of common one. So what they're trying to do in a 3-5-2 is generally the teams that play that have an aim to try and create an overload either in the middle of the pitch or around the top end of the pitch. They're trying to create an overload. And generally speaking, especially on some of the pitches that we've all come across, they're not the best, but doing that and creating an overload. So now we can see that strikers dropped in to make a 4v3. The teams that want to do that, they want to play. They want to get the ball down and they want to play. So if that's happening and they're trying to create an overload in here, then logic would tell you that a lot of the action is going to be within that area. A lot of the collisions, a lot of the fouls, lots of things like that are going to be in that area, especially when building up play. The other area or rotation that happens with a 3-5-2 is often a wide player will come in to overload these areas. So my point with the 3-5-2, and again, there's lots of different things we could talk about, is that the overload happens often in the middle. You're often working with, or that team is trying to work with quality players, ball players. There's probably more touches on the ball. The 6 and the 8 are probably going to have a high volume of touches, and I would suggest a lot of fouls would be in that area as well, because these would probably be more technically proficient players. On the reverse of that, because I want to quickly move on, is if you're playing up against a 4-3-3 in that system and you want to counter-attack quickly, like a Liverpool that set up in that system, then these are the areas that often get exploited against a 3-5-2. So again, if we put those two things together and you're going into the game with a bit of a cheat sheet and you know that this is what's going to happen, you might consider that these are the areas that you need to be around. But thinking about being on the front foot, as we always trying to use football player sort of analogies, but being on the front foot, that if it does break down in this area of overload, then it's very quickly going to turn into a counter-attack. It might be that the counter-attack starts from deep down here. And again, it might be dependent on the age, the stage that you're working with. An under 13 that wins the ball back here is unlikely to shell it 70 yards and land it on his toes. So you've probably got time to recover. if you're reffing at senior level and these are deemed to be lazy wingers, but there's thought behind it, and they win the ball back, then that ball can be quickly turned around in there, and you've got to get on your bike, so to speak. So just a couple of little things that hopefully, we're not going too deep into the tactical stuff, but it's just teasing out maybe one or two really key things that in your mind you can start to think about, okay, well, they're setting up like that, they're setting up like that. If this happens, then this might happen. And I need to think about my positioning and shape to get on. So this is where I was talking about in terms of now delving down into a little bit more of the thirds of the pitch and the tactical understanding. Maybe tonight we'll just look at one of those, and then if we're on again, we might look at the middle of the pitch and the attacking third. But for today, I thought it was probably best to talk about the defending third, or when a team has it from a goal kick, because from a player perspective, when I used to play, I know that when the ball went out for a goal kick, it was a really good time to sort of reset. Okay, right, how did that play go? All right, we didn't score, so now we're back in. How's my game going? It's a bit of self-regulation. And I think for referees, certainly that self-efficacy of understanding, right, this is the state of the game. I'm having a good game here, right? This is what I need to think about. These are the tactical thoughts. This is what they're likely to do. I think a goal kick is a really good time to start having those thoughts and not, there's a nice little 2-minute break where I go and get the ball. And also, generally speaking, it's a high volume of that phase of play, playing out, it breaks down, playing out, breaks down. So a couple of ways of doing it from a coaching perspective. And again, look, I could spend a whole presentation on just this area itself, but playing out. So a high press. So a high press is where a forward, as you've seen, would engage higher up the pitch to not just win the ball. So it's not just about winning it. It's from a coach's perspective, when you haven't got the ball, the most dangerous thing is not knowing what the opposition are going to do. So 2v1s are really dangerous because he can either dribble at you, or he can pass it, and you don't know what's going to happen. If it's 1v1, it becomes a lot easier. So one of the things that we set up, one of the strategies we set up with is trying to make the play predictable. And it's very similar to how that 4-4-2 diamond worked. So if I was to draw a red line down the pitch there, if I could say to that yellow team, right, in this next attack, the ball is only going to travel on this side of the pitch, that'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? Because we know they've got less space to attack down, and we're only marking or defending on half the pitch, and we can even get an overload. So one of the things we do, we try to make the play predictable. I'm not sure if anyone managed to catch it, but Brentford did it brilliantly against Arsenal when they set up with a 4-4-2, and they did this brilliantly. So what we would see here is obviously the ball can be played within the box and teams play out. So if this defender's got the ball here, we want to make his decision easy for him. We want to give him one option and one option only. So this attacker might come off and block that pass into midfield. He might do the similar. So if I was to show you that picture now, really sort of condense the play and do that, where would be the most obvious pass there? Where would we look? I'm not sure if you can see the numbers there, but more often than not, he's not really going to force it in there. A top player could do that if he's got time on the ball, but he's probably getting pressure there. So more or less, we're looking at that pass in there. And once we've done that, okay, then it becomes a different story. Then we can decide whether we engage in here, okay, or do we force him back and then put pressure on, okay? But it all starts from the attitude and the setup of the players. So from a refereeing perspective, if you can see or you know what's coming and they're going to set up this way, then obviously, well, maybe not be obviously, this is my I guess, assumptions of what a referee should do, but I would suggest that this is the half of the field that you need to be closer to, and what you can see. Again, being mindful that if they do get out and they do get on this side, then it's going to go quick. It's going to go quick. So, you've got to do two jobs, and that's what we talk to players about as well, is doing two jobs. Be on top of it and ready to go, and knowing that you're going to be able to see this part of the field, but be ready that if it does get out, and that can help you with your positioning that we spoke about, your reading of the game, and being ready to cover distance. If you're not the fittest, and there's players that are not the fittest, but they read the game very well, that can buy you 10, 15 yards. So if this number 6, not that one, if that midfielder drops right off, and you can see he's going to get that pass, I'd be on my way here doing that, because you know that when that player gets it, he's going to look for the player with the most space, the most danger, and he's going to put it in behind and he's going to go. And if he doesn't, if he does decide to play that one, that 5 yards can always be regained. So again, we talk to players about, if you do the 5 yards first, you can do another easy 5 yards, and it's better to do that than a hard 40 yards. Does that make sense so far? All good?
Yeah, Tom, a really big decision that we make in that particular space is the transition from their BPO, their BT BPO, and how long it takes the goalkeeper to get the ball. So that will really determine the setup from their perspective, because if another ball's there and it's a quick retake, well, then the playing out the back is different from their team tactics perspective, which will, make your decision a little bit different as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point, and something I've not really considered. Obviously, we're talking about nice pitches. The ball's been put right behind. Now we've got plenty of time to get set up. You know what's going to happen. If it is a quick one, then again, I would use a player analogy of do the hard work first, get in, and then if they do play short, you can always recover and be on top of the play. If you're guessing and you hoping, as a player, I've been there when you absolutely shattered and you're recovering and your man's gone, and you're just thinking, oh, please don't play it long, please don't play it long, and you're trotting back and it gets there and you're gone, you can't do anything. Whereas if you dig deep and you get there quick from a quick one, then you can cover both. But yeah, I think that, same for players, same for coaches, the transition moment is the key, isn't it? So that's making play predictable, and it's like a very, very simple thing, but hopefully that was some good information there. So this other one is probably a little bit more aggressive in the press. So this is in this red zone, setting up to win in certain areas. So you often hear Premier League managers on the post-match interview talk about, they were setting good traps for us, or we got caught out, playing out. And teams will set up to encourage players to play into certain areas. And as referees, we need to know what that looks like and why that would be the case. And again, at the top level, it will be down to this player is playing on the right side, but he's left-footed and he's not very good on his right, so we're going to go and press him this way. It'd be top detail. So playing out from the back, pressing high and trying to win it inside is something that I think that we probably need to get better at from a referee perspective, because there's lots of times that teams out of possession set up in a certain way, and it can look messy, it can look like a foul, but we need it to play on because we need the ball in the back of the net and not free kick in this area. So what I mean is the ball will be played out in this way of doing it. The 9 would cut the ball back off to the keeper. This wide player would stop the ball going out wide. So he'd really cut that pass off to the fullback. This fullback would come down, and then these defenders would shuffle across. And this all happens instantly, straight away. So again, making it really obvious, he can't play out here. He can't bounce it back to the keeper. So the only way he can go in here is now into here, into here, into here, or if he wants a long run over the top, which we can deal with. So what I meant by lots of fouls given away is, say in these areas here, if that ball's played in and these 3 midfielders know what's going to happen, and they maybe get a toe there, maybe just get their body there, and the recovering greens maybe make a foul, we don't really want that foul to be given. We want it to wait, just give it 30 seconds or 5 seconds on the whistle, because these players are all clued up to the fact that they just want to spoil it. So I'm just trying to maybe use different language here, but when the ball gets played in, just because these players don't come away with the ball cleanly doesn't mean to say that that's not what they want to happen, because all these other players will be running on top of it. And because the two defenders are split, that straight pass into that striker's on to score. Yeah, so it goes into this danger area. We get a toe, we get a 50-50, it's scrappy. The ball breaks out, straight pass into that 9, and it's a goal. Okay, so this is where your positioning obviously is going to be important. Sorry, that's the ball. This is the referee. Being on top of this one is really important here, and being able to see that one. Okay, so if we're out here or we're too shallow, but maybe being right on top of it and just being patient with that whistle when we're pressing high, I think is really important. You can always pull it back, but there's a purpose to that one. Is there any questions on that one? All good? And then similar with the high press here, again, this time we're looking to win the ball out wide. So we're looking to win the ball out wide. And what I would suggest here is that what these attackers would do is maybe stay inside to encourage a pass out to a fullback. And then the players would look to engage and win the ball back, either in that first conflict, that second one, out in these areas here. So in terms of positioning here, I think you need to be mindful that as that ball gets played out, again, that red line across the pitch, if that ball comes out onto this side, we're on top of it. But more so with this one, we need to be mindful that we probably need to think about moving in that direction as well, because we want to encourage playing out wide. So again, if the ball gets played out here, if it's not won in this first conflict, we want that pass to be played down the line. Oh, not that one. Down the line, and it may be won in this conflict. So your movement as a referee might need to be, that one there. Okay, so that's winning the ball inside on the outside area, and then the other one to consider is, you often heard the phrase, let them have it, just let them have it, they can do what they want with it, play across the back, they're fine. If that's the case, they're probably looking to set up with a bit of a mid-block. So a mid-block is, as you can imagine, where you drop off into this sort of red zone here, you let the defenders have the ball, but as soon as that ball enters that red zone, that win zone, we're on, we're going to go and win it. And that's when this player might step out, shuffle across, okay? And that's about obviously being disciplined, having more bodies behind the ball. Now, for that one, as a referee, I would suggest, obviously, our starting position when we play out, and you suss it out very quickly, is they might actually start like that, and there's no point in standing there because all you'd be doing is running out with the defender. So you can save yourself some legs there. You can drop right off. And as that player steps out, then I would suggest that with that diagonal run, you just need to be mindful that the idea of this, or the way that this is unlocked from the green team, is to try and get the yellows over to one side before switching it the other side. So a mid block is probably easier to manage, I'd say. It's a bit slower, and you can probably see things a lot from a wider distance. But hopefully you can see the differences here between a high press and aggressive press, and you need to be on top of it. And then a mid block where you just wait, the defending team is just waiting for what we call triggers and cues. So if that pass there is slow or it's a bad first touch, then that's when the players are going to go on top and go and win it. So the yellows in this instance are relying upon the greens having some bad touches or some poor passes, and then they'll be right on top of it. So in terms of your prediction of what's going to happen, I would say whenever you see a slow pass, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be a coming together. The yellow team, that's their trigger to step in. Okay. So look, there were just a couple of little ideas, a couple of little things. And the other thing I wanted to raise, or is there any questions on those two things? Any questions? Look, it's very surface, we're only scratching the surface, but just hoping to, again, get you thinking about the way teams set up, and where you can position yourself. Other things from a player perspective, so me talking as a player now, how else do you think this sort of tactical understanding or knowledge of the game might help you in terms of your refereeing or the game. So what else, you know, so we spoke about tactical and models of decision making, but how else do you think that would help you with the game from a player perspective, me being a player?
Individual groups or their playing groups have got tasks, and within those tasks they've got individual tasks. So again, understanding key players within those tasks, their ability and everything else like that are key to the way you unlock some of these.
Yeah, that's spot on, mate. Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what I was thinking about. Probably even more, I don't know how to frame it in a referee context, but just talking from it as an ex-player perspective, if you're a referee and you know my game and what I'm doing, even just talking to me on a basic level of player management, if I know that you know what I'm trying to do, it makes such a difference. So much, the level of respect will go so, like, it jumps right up. Not that there should be any disrespect anyway, but I think that if you know that this player is in for a tough time because they keep showing him down the line, then you know in game management, right, I'm going to watch his performance in the first 10, 15 minutes, because if he gets kicked up in the air 3 times, right, that's a player on my checklist that I know he can go 2 ways here. Is he going to get fired up, or is he going to go out the game? So I just think knowing, you don't have to know like exact specific details, but as you mentioned there, knowing the task and what they're doing, what they're meant to be doing. Another great example for that is, for example, just in this one, and don't want to take up too much more of your time, but if you know that this player's job is to win the ball high, and his job is to engage this player here when that ball comes in, and you've had a look before that ball's travelling, and you know, actually, do you know what, he's a little bit further away than he used to be, then you know he's going to be arriving late there. And unless he puts the brakes on, he's going to be coming through the back of him there. So just little things like that of knowing, right, his job should be, he should be touch tight by now. Why isn't he? Because if you're on top of that and you know he's coming late, well, it's going to either end badly for him in terms of not getting there and this player turning and going, or it's going to end bad in terms of a late tackle. So that's what I was talking about in terms of other aspects of knowing the game, is it can start to, it's like a, what's the word? There's so many benefits to it. There's so many benefits to it, because then you can start going into the real detail. I thought I'd just end on just a bit more of a personal sort of anecdote from myself is, and it ties into that about player management. So I was lucky enough to play in the game where Mark Clattenburg was the referee. So he came over to Australia and he managed the Lions versus Mitchelton game. And a quick little story about that, and I think it sums this up perfectly, was I was injured. I'd been out for a long time, and this was my first game back. And Lions was a big pitch, still is a big pitch. And unfortunately for myself, Mark was fantastic at letting the game go. Incredible. So there was hardly any fouls. He was on top of decisions. Like there wasn't any 50-50s that happened where he wasn't right on top of it. So from my perspective, coming back from fitness, the ball was always in play. And I was absolutely shattered, and I had to be subbed soon after half time because I had no legs. But and he was obviously a top level referee. So I'd invite you just to watch the highlights of that game. But when you watch the game, just watch how close and on top of everything he is. It's amazing, like how he knows what's happening with the game. He didn't know us from players. He didn't know us from team shape. He might have had a little bit of knowledge, and I think some of his post-match comments about the two teams, I think someone had, given him a bit of a heads up about what might happen. And he had some quality assistance on the day as well, Anton, I think. So, yeah, have a look at that game and just see how much he's on top of things. And because he's on top of things, you couldn't get away with anything. And because you couldn't get away with anything and he was talking to us, it meant that as a player, you obviously want to get one over on the ref and try and win more decisions that are not yours, but you had nowhere to go with him. And he was brilliant, really good referee. So just watch that. and you can see me puffing and panting as well. So if there's any questions or thoughts, just say as well, if you do have a game coming up and you know it's a big game or it's one that you want to get right, and you say, look, Tom, I've got whoever it is, Western Pride against whoever, it's a big game, can you give me a heads up on a couple of things tactically or technical to think about, then drop me a line, and I'll be happy to let you know just some loose ideas or thoughts. Or it might be, Tom, I've got this game on the weekend, what's the coach like, how does he set up, are the players going to be foaming at the mouth at kickoff, or is it going to be a game that builds in? So yeah, so over to you really, if there's any questions or thoughts, but yeah, certainly on the other end of an email or a call if you need me.
Great. If anyone doesn't have any thoughts on that, I know I have a few. I guess my key takeaways is it's really important that referees probably shape up the same as a player and see what they're looking at. The more that we scan, instead of, because referees tend to ball watch and then we react, and that's what causes us problems. What else have I got down here? Tom, I really think that we're going to probably do a masterclass with you guys at our upcoming seminar. Work with the assessors as well to help coach the referees coming through. I think that would be really important, as well as the referees. So I'm just spitballing some ideas. So I'll catch up with you later in regards to that. It's really important, you really touched on the back that it was, we are students of football, and it's really important that it doesn't matter how fine of a wine we become with age, we never stop learning. In the attacking third, it's really important to read the player's body language. So when the ball goes out and we kind of do switch off with a goal kick sort of thing, it's really important to see how those players are reacting, how they're setting up, and what potentially could happen. Are they going to go short? But not only look at what the short options are, what's actually happening behind you. Also that scanning and that awareness behind you can find out whether an attacker and defender are kind of kicking each other off the ball as well. That's really good information. Plus checking the technical area to make sure that they're all happy. And with the mid block, this would be not the time to go into a high line position, because they're looking to stop that, while a lot of referees would probably look to push up a bit high, and that's when we get caught out again, sort of thing. So it's really important that we understand these tactics. We identify what the playing channels are, the high density areas, and for us not to position ourselves to get in the way. We talk about diagonal running, but a lot of those setups, if we're on the diagonal, we're probably actually right in the middle of where that next phase is going to be, and that's what's going to cause us problems. And that's why anticipating play and this session was, so for me, it was really valuable in that point as well. So
yeah, look, again, it's opened my eyes to things about how, again, students of the game and how you read it. And I guess, again, if you go up to the top levels, players will bend the rules massively to any advantage. One of the things that I didn't actually sort of mention, and I thought it was quite funny, I was driving up from Meakin Park today, and I was listening to a podcast, and it was of a player, Bobby Zamora, and he used to play for Tottenham and West Ham and lots of other clubs, but he was asked who was the player that he hated playing against the most, and he said it was a player called Carvalho, who played for Chelsea. And what he said was, when they were trying to win the ball high, and he was an attacker, so he was like pressing the ball. When he had the ball, Carvalho, and he played it inside, and the striker was running past him, Carvalho would, as he's running past, put his elbow out, or he'd kick him, or he'd pull his shirt, and he said it got so under his skin that in the next challenge he would go over the top and get booked. And so what I was thinking was, it's a prime example of, as you mentioned there, Jackie, is seeing other things that are going on, not just the play, because that I coach. I did a session the other night where I was telling my centre backs that you've got to run across the line of the forward to stop him pressuring the keeper. So there's lots of opportunity to see lots of things going on, and just be mindful that yeah, everyone's out to win, and there's lots to see on the pitch.
All right. Thanks very much, Tom. Again, please reach out to Tom if you've got any questions, post this one or Football Queensland, and we can pass them on.
No worries. Thank you, guys. I'm going to leave you. I'll leave my email in the chat as well, but you'll see the slides soon. Thank you. Cheers.
Okay. So how to be in the right place at the right time. All right. So what is the best position? It is one that will allow you to make the correct decision. Therefore, referees need to be flexible and intelligent in their match management. So how do we achieve the best position? Through tactical awareness, which is, we talked about one aspect in regards to pressing and goal kick situations. And of course, our physical capacity will impact that. So knowing yourself and your potential limitations will be a key to a successful match. What is the difference between positioning and mobility? So mobility is about getting somewhere by utilizing your fitness base, speed, endurance, agility, and dynamic movement. And positioning is knowing where that somewhere is. So as we just discussed, the diagonal. So when we teach referees about positioning principles, they are encouraged to work on a flexible diagonal from one corner of the penalty area to the opposite penalty area. However, if we're robotic in our movement and we put strict adherence to the diagonal, it often results us being further from play. Hence, it's really important that we're able to read the match and anticipate play. All right, as we just discussed with counter attacks, moving with the attackers when they start their movement on the press, accelerate to maintain proximity and angle of view, and being aware of playing channels, passing options, and don't run directly behind the play and or plays. And as you know, Tom alluded to, is that is already happening when that ball is out of play. So having that awareness when the goal kick is setting up is that we scan to see what is happening and to position ourselves for the potential options. If that press happens here, the ball's going to move across here, so I can position myself here and I'll be safe in the knowledge that I wouldn't interfere with those playing options. And again, with building up in the midfield, obviously they're going to let the defenders have that ball and they're going to press in that middle channel. So don't push to a high line position or probably go out too wide, because they're probably the areas that they're going to be playing in. Before you move, consider the players' passing options and their playing space. And again, when we talk about high line, if you're ever going to go high line and you know it's going to go into that area, go early. Okay, so I sent out 3 links, but I think we're only going to talk about one. We're about to hit 8 o'clock, so we're going to spend the next 15 minutes looking at the FQPL2 match. I think there's probably a bit more meat in that clip than there is in the NPL or the NPLW, but you can definitely look at them and think about the exercise after this session, or any of the highlights. Will also give you a few cues in regards to that. So in your groups, I want you to think about the team tactics employed and some of the stuff that Tom has covered. You know, can you kind of see their formation? But like Tom said, that formation, they may not stick to it strictly once kickoff happens. The style of play and the key players, and based on the above analysis, what strategy should the referee consider during the match, i.e. the positioning, the match management, and potential issues that could be caused by how they're trying to play. Again, we're not analysing the refereeing decisions, but more focusing on of how the teams are trying to play and how can we best identify this and referee the match to the best of our ability. All right, so there are, in groups 2, 4, and 6, there were some really great discussions and some different discussions as well, which was really exciting to hear. Mark, how did the groups 1, 3, and 5 go?
Very similar, Jackie. Some different discussions over different ideas and how to manage a game.
I think we just lost
The shit that was on the screen.
Okay, all right. We'll start off with Brad. We won't go to your group, but group 4. I'll get you guys to start off with because I really liked your analysis. It was led by Pez.
Over to you, Nikki. Wheels,
mate. I love that. I scribed everything down. I guess to start with, we played through the clips and spoke quickly about formation. I would say quickly, but it took us like a minute of back and forth to kind of decide. And from there, it was identifying the team tactics. So, the way that they both play on the ball. So specifically for Blue Team, for North Star, and I guess I should say it quickly, like both teams are delaying the restart for the other team. Like once they lose possession of the ball via a free kick, they don't want them to take it quick. But for North Star, immediately easy to recognise from these clips, they're pressing the back four at the right times and as a unit. So they're sliding their team over to the side. In one of the clips says, I think it's like the left winger, and he's kind of pressing the right back passes back to the centre back, and automatically, this is what the guys are speaking about, the 2 strikers are on top of him already, and they're forcing the long ball or an error, basically. And if they can get a change of possession out of that 1 in 10 times as the referee, where do we position? We have to be close. When it came to Grange, obviously, they're trying to play a traditional format of 4-4-2, push it out the back, go to the sides, get space and get it to their players. And North Star, obviously, via coaching or whatever, have found a really good way to exploit that. And as a referee, seeing those things, and Brad did a good job in this game, you have to be close to those transitions. You have to identify early if they're going to play that way, that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to try and press it. And when they lose possession, you have to be there just by reading the play. Specifically for players, we spoke about a couple of skillful players. So blonde guy, number 17 from North Star, and number 5 from Grange, and the Grange right back as well. Just like a few things, like the Grange right back always runs up when he can, and it's something that North Star knew to exploit. And even one of the clips there, the left back for Grange, like he's trying to move up the field, and Granger just slowly creeping in, force a bad pass, and like the referee's on the top of his toes, trying to sprint as fast as he can to catch up. Yeah, it's a dodgy pass, but knowing that those players are creeping in and starting to get yourself closer and closer is definitely the best way to go.
All right. Mark, who are you going to pick on?
I'm going to pick on Paul's group. There was some interesting discussions coming through Paul's group, which I think was group 3.
Correct. From our point of view, we were discussing some interesting points, such as whether the referee looks more at formations and who's doing what, as opposed to picking out some of the key protagonists in the game and some of the key players as well. So that was mentioned in that last group also, that it's really important to notice the skillful players on the field and what they're trying to do. It's also important to be aware of players that are trying to disrupt. And we said that a lot of players in this game were trying to disrupt in that middle of the field. As Tom said before, both these formations, I think, were trying to cancel each other out, which made it a very challenging game for the referee. So there was some high pressing going on early. So the referee had to be aware of some, pressing and late challenges on both the fullbacks and also the goalkeeper. There was also, some flooding of the midfield where there were a lot of fouls in the middle third of the match, or the field, sorry. And the referee was doing a fairly good job, we felt, to, try and read the play and get involved in those areas. Also, this sort of game, as it was panning out, there wasn't really a lot of need to look for advantage, because you could see the style of game it was. There had to be a very clear advantage for you to really look for that. And it was probably better to sacrifice advantage for match control. So There was some of the things we looked at there. And I think, it was a very challenging game. A lot of fouls in the midfield, as we said. The referee did his best to get close and try and anticipate where those fouls were going to be. And it would have been a handful for anyone.
All right, then we'll move on to Group 6. Anton, I don't know whether you're going to speak or whether you will nominate a key speaker for you guys into regard to some strategies.
I wish nominate someone if they're happy to talk to.
Well, welcome home and congratulations on the Olympics.
Thank you very much. Good to be home. Not yet, still in isolation. Nearly there. Anybody want to speak from Group 6? Zach? Anybody? I assume not.
So a couple of points. Yeah, well, it was probably best covered earlier, but the standout for us was probably two things. The first one was the delay tactics.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty clear. And in our opinion, probably a strong bit earlier marker as to managing that is maybe some use of gestures, or if you have, there's one that stood out to us, it was around the 26th, I think, where you could seriously justify a caution in that aspect for the picking the ball up and running away with it, like when it's so clear like that. That obvious tactic can bring an obvious reaction from a referee and it sets a marker. And then probably, again, in the player management, it's probably where we haven't covered as much, with identifying the team tactic to break up play as well as protagonists. But there was quite a clear tactic from Orange to quickly foul Blue. So it may not have been a one-off promising attack, but a series of ones where you'd be considering. So that team tactic there where you might be doing the big warning and talking to the captain, even in this first half where it was so clear, to look to try and prevent the team tactic as opposed to just a one-off as well. I think that
and just addition to that, so we just spoke about it's very important to identify which strategy you're going to use for the game, especially with the two top teams playing against each other. And find the right moment of the game where you need to start to dry off the game to find a small free kicks, don't play advantage, and use right speed of the game to the atmosphere that going through. Yeah. And the caution, they send the right messages to the players when you caution the players.
Yeah, and the caution definitely has to have impact. And it's like Anton said, it's picking that moment in that game to give it. And an early caution in regards to the delay tactics, especially, it was very evident from the start that was going to happen, and send a really clear message that you understand it and you're not going to put up with it. All right. And Mark, did any of the other groups have anything else to add before we'll get Brad to inform us what his key takeaways from this match?
I think Group 1, Kerry's group, had a few other things, if I remember correctly.
Hey, Mark. I was with Catherine and Brad, and we were talking about pretty much what everyone else has said. Got to the point where, playing advantage really wasn't part of it anymore based off how the teams were going and taken out of the game. And, Jackie on Huddle said it herself, it's third minute, and they've already started, the tactics about trying to, if we lose the ball, let's just kill the game so we can set back up, and that style of play for how they played and the cheapness of the contact and the persistent nature of doing it throughout the entire game we were talking about. We also just talked about other leagues and ways of refereeing that we've been doing ourselves throughout the year, not just sort of focusing on that North Star game, which was good because we haven't been able to sort of get around other people to have the chat. So it was good to try and reflect on other instances of our own games. Didn't realise you could actually hear what we were talking about, Mark. That's interesting to know. because there was one Furpy thrown out there at one point that all of a sudden the recording stopped, which was kind of funny. I'm going to stop now.
Okay, so Brad, what were your key takeaways from this match?
Some of the key takeaways that I took from this match, watching back, was I really need to jump on early the like stamping out the delaying tactics from Grange Thistle at the start there. Within the first 10 minutes, they're already standing on the ball. They're already rolling the ball away. They're grabbing it. It was just, I mean, a quiet word on the run just didn't work in the end because it happened a few times. And then the other thing as well, looking at it, was North Star pressing really early and really pushing on Grange Thistle in that back line and wanting to really, make them stuff up the ball, which it did occur as well, and ended up being a late challenge on the keeper. I was quite far away from play because I didn't recognize that press, and I should have been up further at the field of play. And I think, those were two of the big things. Really, just for me, it kind of bit me in the bum really later on in the second half, especially towards the end of the second half when it just hit the fan. It was just out of nothing, really. But yeah, I could have saved myself energy as well at the end there if I'd sort of, used it earlier on in the game.
Was there any key, I guess, things that brought up from this session that made you think different in regards to this game? Or if this game started to, Groundhog Day, you had this game situation happen again, that you would apply that you may not have been aware of or identified?
Honestly, just like their style of play. I think like for me, and I'm really trying to put it into my games now, is that because it's not the first time it's happened, is that delaying tactic. Just because I know that really frustrates the heck out of the players, and you just want to get that game flowing. And then as well as just sort of really understanding team tactics before the game, understand how a team plays, so you could move around the field a little bit better. I probably should have watched a few more videos on these two teams before coming down and refereeing them. But yeah, that's what I kind of took from it.
No worries. All right, thanks, Brad. Thanks for sharing. All right. Okay, so we're pretty much on time tonight, which is a change for me. So in summary, being in the right position is more about being able to run fast. You need to be able to anticipate the situation and choose your position smartly. Use the diagonal as a positioning tool. Don't be robotic in your movement, i.e. automatically go left because that's what you're always taught. It's really important that we look at what the game is telling us and to position ourselves accordingly. Of course, angle of view, the best angle of view, either move left or right. Whatever is going to be the best angle for you to see. Think ahead. What are the team tactics, the key players? What have the trends been and how will they change depending on the match events? Always be alert and focused and keep moving. When you're on the move, it's easier to change direction or accelerate than when you're standing still. So that's just being flat-footed. All right. Does anyone have any questions in regards to that? No? We didn't have any general business. We only had one question in which Mark will touch base with that person to go through their query. But if anyone doesn't have any questions in regards to that, I bid you good night.